Every day, your brain is doing one of two things. It is getting sharper or it is getting weaker, and the scary part is that most people never notice which direction it is moving until it is too late. This is not about intelligence. You were not born with a fixed brain. The real damage comes from somewhere smaller. It is built into the habits you barely notice you have. Gloria Mark, a professor of informatics at the University of California Irvine, spent years sitting beside workers with a stopwatch. She measured how long people could focus on a single task before switching to something else. In 2004, the average was 2.5 minutes. By 2020, that number had collapsed to 47 seconds. Less than a minute of focus before the brain moves on, and after any interruption, her research found it takes an average of 25 minutes to fully return to deep focus. Not because people are lazy, because their brains were reshaped slowly to expect faster and faster rewards. Here is how it happened. And here are the 3 habits most responsible. The first is scrolling. Every time you open a short video and swipe to the next one before it finishes, your brain is not just being distracted, it is being trained. Short-form video activates the same dopamine circuits that addiction researchers study in substance use. Each new video produces a small chemical spike, and your brain learns to chase more of it faster and faster until waiting feels unbearable. A 2025 brain imaging study followed 45 college students. Researchers compared those who showed signs of short video addiction with those who did not. The heavy users showed altered activity in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for impulse control, rational thinking, and sustained attention. Their brains had to work harder just to resist the next swipe. The very structure that allows you to think clearly was being strained and worn down. The more you scroll, the harder everything else feels. Not because books or studying or deep work actually got harder, because your brain rewired itself to expect instant payoff. Anything that requires waiting, sitting with difficulty, or building understanding over time starts to feel like punishment. The second habit is sleep deprivation. In 2018, researchers funded by the National Institutes of Health published a study that changed how neuroscientists think about sleep. They found that after a single night of poor sleep, levels of beta-amyloid, a toxic protein strongly linked to Alzheimer's disease, increased measurably in the brain's hippocampus and thalamus. One night. Here is why. During sleep, your brain activates something called the glymphatic system. Cerebrospinal fluid flows through microscopic channels and physically washes out the metabolic waste that accumulated during waking hours. Skip that window, and the waste stays. Night after night, those compounds accumulate. A landmark meta-analysis by researchers Pilcher and Huffcutt reviewed 19 sleep studies covering nearly 2,000 people. Sleep-deprived participants functioned at the level of only the bottom 9% of rested controls on cognitive tests. In other words, worse than 91% of them. Not slightly worse. The gap was enormous. And there is one more effect almost no one talks about. Sleep deprivation disconnects the amygdala, your brain's emotional center, from the prefrontal cortex, the region that controls rational thought. Without that connection, fear feels larger. Frustration feels uncontrollable. Every small problem feels urgent and unsolvable. Your brain is not making poor decisions because it is unintelligent. It is making poor decisions because it was never allowed to clean itself and reset. The third habit is multitasking. Researchers Rubenstein, Meyer, and Evans found that switching your attention between tasks, messages, videos, and notifications wastes up to 40% of your productive cognitive time. Not because your brain is slow, because every switch requires your prefrontal cortex to unload the previous context and reload a new one, every single time. But the finding that should surprise you most came from Stanford. Researchers Ophir, Nass, and Wagner studied people who multitasked heavily with media. The assumption was that constant switching would make them better at it. The data said the opposite. Heavy multitaskers performed significantly worse on task switching tests than light multitaskers. They struggled more to filter out irrelevant information. Their working memory was weaker. The more you multitask, the worse you become at the one thing multitasking supposedly requires. Here is the pattern that connects all three. Scrolling tells your brain the next thing will be better. Sleep deprivation tells it there is no time to slow down. Multitasking tells it doing more at once means achieving more. All three are wrong, and all three quietly reshape the architecture of your mind to believe they are right. Your brain is not getting weaker because it was born that way. It is getting weaker because it keeps being handed tools designed to capture its attention, not strengthen it. Every day, your brain is either getting stronger or getting weaker. Most people will keep scrolling through short videos, keep sleeping 5 hours a night, keep switching between a dozen open tabs, and they will keep wondering why focus feels impossible, why thinking feels harder than it used to. Now you know why. The question is what you do with that knowledge.